Well, hello and welcome to Journey Through the Eyes, the EMDR podcast that is here to unveil and explore the transformative power of EMDR therapy. Our mission here is to support clinicians with the critical conversations and resources about EMDR therapy and building your own private practice. And so I and my friend here, Kathy Couch, I am your host, Tamera J. Brown, and we're both here to or excited to embark on this amazing conversation with you on today. I want to hand the mic over to my host, Kathy, and let her come on and introduce herself.
Hi, Tamera.
Hi.
So excited for this podcast to be here. Tamera and I have been working on it for a really long time. We love having these conversations. We decided that we were just having them between us. And so I wanted to invite everyone to share in the topics that we're learning and talking about. And so today we're just going to start by explaining EMDR. What is it? How do you explain it to clients? And then just go from there.
I absolutely love it. And so, my dear friend, you know that we are talking about just your experience because you've been doing EMDR as a therapist longer than I have. And so I think it would be such an honor to be able to toss the hot mic over to you and just getting us started. And so talk to us, give us the deets, friend. What the heck is EMDR? What is it?
I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk a little bit about the structure of the training because it's a little more complex than going through just going to a training. So I also wanted to give an overview of that process through. I think that's a part that's missed. That's why I developed EMDR University at Rewired 362. So I want to kind of talk about that. So let's talk about that first, and then we can talk about what EMDR is. So this is for the clinicians. So if you're a clinician looking to resolve trauma or traumatic memories and curious about EMDR, you go to an initial training. Tamera and I have both been initially trained in a basic training, and that's a six days. It's usually split apart in 3 days each. Sometimes it's on weekends, sometimes it's on weekdays, and then you have the ability to practice EMDR within those practicum settings within that training. And then you also have 10 hours of just consultation in between those basic trainings. And you can be considered what's called basic trained. So that's for master's level clinicians who have been through that program. Then you can call yourself basic trained. You'll get a certificate. Usually there are institutions, training organizations that put on those trainings. And so you'll be working with a training organization or a trainer to become EMDR trained. Once you're EMDR trained, then you can become EMDR certified. That's where I met Tamera in that journey. And my experience is it was a little disjointed I couldn't find a solid place to land, a consultant that I wanted to work with. People have picked several consultants for different reasons. And the criteria was somewhat elusive to people, right? How do I get to be certified? Really, it's 20 hours of group or individual consultation, 10 of which have to be individual. You have to do some advanced trainings and have some peers write recommendation letters and work with either a consultant in training or an approved consultant to get those hours. Once that's done, you can work with a trainer. So that's working with patients. That's consultation, working with patients, right? You come to me, say, I have this patient struggling with substance abuse or grief or trauma. They have this dissociative episode. What do I do? So the certification is the skills for that framework, that market. And then the consultation program is for people who want to teach others how to do it. Me as being a natural teacher, working in a university for 10 years, I love doing that. And so then I've developed the other program where you can work in groups and provide consultation, and then you can become an approved consultant, offer your own trainings, and then you have to be those before you're a basic trainer. So I say you have to teach in the bachelor's program before you can teach in the master's program. So that's kind of the structure there. And I'm walking Tamera kind of through that process.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you kind of breaking that down because I think that part is important, right? Because I think that EMDR and my own philosophy is just in fact that it is a journey. Okay. And you and I have really met, our worlds have collided because of the amazing EMDR journey and getting started. And I think that you did a great job in talking about how we actually get our feet wet, right? Which is participating in those trainings, which is a whole experience all in itself. Okay.
Yes.
It almost feels like going back to school. If you can remember when you were trying to pick out what you were going to go to college for, it's like, all these things. And so we thank you so much, Kathy, for, really highlighting that the idea, whether you're a clinician or someone who is looking to get trained in it, that you have an expectation and knowing what to kind of look for, because it is a journey for both the clinician and the client, right?
Yeah, and find out, my recommendation is, whether it's myself or Tamera, whatever consultant you're with, make sure that they're a good fit with you as a clinician. Make sure that they support your learning goals, that they really teach you about EMDR. And the whole idea is that there's this broader realm of opportunities and what's kind of presented at basic training, which it should be. Basic training is focused on the intervention, the protocol, which Francine Shapiro sort of developed. And then these other, beyond EMDRIA, beyond these organizations, what I'm trying to do is help clinicians be business owners and help them with their entrepreneurship skills. Because as you're a consultant offering these services, it's kind of like, how do I create a business around this, right? And what's my market, or what's my niche? So that's kind of for the provider side, how that looks. And if you're a patient, you can ask those questions. Are you just basic trained? Are you certified? Which will tell you as a patient, they've done the hours, they've done the work to be able to get that certification. Or are you a consultant? Do you teach others? Or are you a trainer? Do you train others? And that'll just give you a really good idea of what level of skill you're working with. I've had several patients come to me and say, oh, they just did that little safe place exercise and we were done and it worked or it didn't work, which is one of the protocols in the basic training. Once you get to be advanced, you can adapt those trainings to meet the patient, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really powerful. That first of all, Rewire 360 does in fact help guide new clinicians through the EMDR journey, because however powerful, however impactful, right, it still is a lot of journey. That if you are an EMDR aspiring EMDR therapist, so just an EMDR therapist, maybe you have someone who's listening who has gone through the journey and feeling like, oh, I'm kind of lost in this limbo, or trying to find a good place to land. I have found that Rewire 360 has been, definitely a game changer. And if I can say this, right, it's really helped me to press pause on trying to be out in the sea of searching, right?
Yeah.
It's like just swim, like where I go, And so, yeah, beautiful, beautiful, Kathy. And
A
I'm
great way to put it. It does sometimes feel like a sea. So after you're basic trained, you can choose a consultant, right? Some consultants say, no, you can't go somewhere else. Some say you're not really ready. And I'm more of a learner. Like, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? How do I get you there? I'm a companion. And that's what I found was missing in the marketplace there. And so I want to talk a little bit about when you go to EMDR basic training, it's a mission, not a training, right? I've been to several trainings, DBT, TFCBT, refocus trainings. And a lot of us, by the time we get to EMDR as clinicians, right, we've had all these trainings. And so when I went to this training, I ran a trauma-informed substance abuse program. And I just felt like people's brains were leaving open. And that is what we call an EMDR resourcing. They didn't have the skills to mitigate the distress, and I didn't know what to do. So when I found EMDR, because I knew I loved trauma, I had been working with grievers for a really long time. And I was like, oh, I really get this now. We're working on the exact memory. And, it's the other thing I want to mention as a clinician going into basic training, be very mindful of self-care, right? Maybe Tamera has some experience. I know I had an experience where I was just exhausted after those 3 days. Sometimes mine's more on the weekends. So I went back to clinical work on Monday and was like, oh, I am so exhausted, right? And so just knowing that going into EMDR training, what to know before training, we can talk a little bit about, and then we'll talk about the EMDR training itself. Do you have any input there, Tamera?
I think that you highlighted something that is really important, that number one, if you are an aspiring EMDR therapist, right, either a trained one or you want to get fully certified in it, and when you do go into those weekends, I know for me, Kathy, I had to do the 2 weekends, so
Right.
those were over a weekend period. And the thing that I loved about it was the fact that we had to experience EMDR ourselves. So it really helped me, and I cannot wait for our future conversation on this, but to talk about the therapists doing their own healing work on the journey. And then they also encouraged us to take off of work Monday.
Okay, I didn't get that. So
Yeah, the folks I went with, and I went through the EMDR Institute. And so, and the people that I was working with at the time, there was a big recommendation to take off and don't just go back to work on Monday, because it was a lot to process. And that is to say that EMDR is a whole thing. That's what I like to tell clients when I'm introducing it, is that it really is a whole thing. So yeah, I'm excited to unpack more of this with us today.
So EMDR, what I really enjoyed about it was it's an evidence-based protocol. The Francine Shapiro actually experienced results herself before sort of writing the 8-phase protocol. So let's just kind of go through and talk about what the protocol is, and then we can talk about strategies there as clinicians we may have used in our practice. So EMDR, what does it mean? Eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. In 1989, Francine Shapiro called it EMD, eye movement desensitization. And it was changed at that time to add reprocessing, which we call now as clinicians adaptive information. So reprocessing means you take a memory. So eye movement is they use bilateral stimulation of the right and left sides of the brain to move information. So it's an information processing model, right? Then they desensitize it, which means it reduces the effect on your body and emotions. But what she missed was this reprocessing. We retake that information and reintegrate it into an adaptive experience, a part in the brain that is good, powerful, resiliency. We've heard a lot of times that word. And so she added that word to sort of give that flavor of changing the memories to where it doesn't cause disturbance in our body and emotions. So that's kind of how it started. And then go ahead, Tamera.
Yeah, so I think what you're sharing is really powerful, right? About Dr. Francine Shapiro and talking about her and giving all praise and credit and all the things to her, right? Because I know for me, Kathy, her story really, really is a part of the passion of why I share. Now, I know that there's lots of things out there about the phenomenal Dr. Francine, but the story that got me about what interested me with this beautiful therapy was the fact that she was already a researcher, right? So she was understanding already things about the brain and body, but that how she, just like how we go through things, she was trying to take a walk or take a break in the park, trying to just recoup or what have you, and then started doing the bilateral movements with her eyes as she's sitting there, and then notices this, right? And so, yeah.
Hers were originally up and down movements, not left to right. So what she began was noticing it was up and down movements, and then it was reframed now to left to right, which makes sense when you look at the left and right hemispheres of the brain. But what I didn't say to you, Tamera, was that I think it's very important that we talk about clinical self-care. She was actually trying to, do something for herself to be able to work on this inner place that we have as therapists, right? And that's one of my most powerful stories from basic training is we have had to do it too. When I did this was my experience, and that really aligns with patients to be able to let them know that you're a partner in the process with them, right? It's not just the therapist giving them skills and leaving. It's a partner in how to go into the memory and keep them safe, right?
And I think that the part that, when we listen and we talk about therapy, right? I think it's really important as we're talking about the bilateral stimulation and the movements and everything to really help people who may be new to this to understand how the mind and the body works, right? That EMDR in itself is a holistic therapy. That means that we're taking a look at the brain and the body, right? And looking at the impact of how certain life challenges that we've been through, how oftentimes those things can have an impact, right, on the brain and on the body. And one of the things that I thought was interesting in me getting this journey, and yeah, I'm 2 years in, so I'm still learning, right? But what has really, really changed my life and being on this journey of becoming an EMDR therapist is recognizing the power of the brain and the nervous system and how critical focusing on those points and addressing that in therapy. Because I know for me, I was helping and seeing clients and, on the journey, you're trying to figure out what's going to work. Like you said, we get all these trainings, CBT, DBT, but then I know for me, I was using it while I was having some successes. I was still seeing and hearing my clients talk about a lot of their, just inner suffering. And I think that that's where EMDR also holds it's just a game changer, right? It's just a
When
game
I think about it, I've had to have, I always say to my consultees, you have to have an EMDR experience and know your why. So when I had done basic training, I'd done my consultation. The way I kind of began blooming as a therapist was I heard about a protocol. Now I know it's Kitty O'Shea's pre-verbal protocol, but I didn't know what it was, where you can go back in the womb to pre-verbal trauma to be able to readjust and readapt that. And so that's where I started asking my consultant those questions. And then that's how I began to learn I can modify from the basic training. If you know what you're modifying from, and that's what I say to my consultees as certified therapists, you now know how to adapt these skills that you learned in basic training so that you know what you're adapting from. So really, when we take the brain, really EMDR takes a brain, takes a memory, we look at the thought, emotion, body channel, we assess where the disturbance is, then we are able to look at the memory, figure out a selected memory or belief, we identify negative and positive cognition, emotion, body sensation, how distressing it is. Then we are able to go through, we use eye movements to move that information processing in the brain till it's no longer a distress to them or ecologically sound. Then we're able to go through and install that. We call it install, but basically strengthen that positive belief with that resolved memory. We scan the body to be able to release it in body and emotion. And then the target, we call target in therapy, we call it a goal, is complete. So I can actually say to people, this is complete, right? And it moves the information through so much quicker and faster, and the results last so much longer. And when I can do my EMDR intensives, I had a patient and he resolved 60 years of trauma from a 6-year-old memory in 3 hours in an intensive.
Wow.
That's the magic, right? I just can't let that go.
Yeah, and that's huge. And so how would you say, right? I mean, because it's just loaded. EMDR is such, I love how you just talked about the journey of it and where we often start. And then now talking about some of the benefits of doing it, right? Because we got people, I mean, like, we all have been through different things, different situations and adversities in life, and there are some people who've been through some really tough things and have done the best that they could to try to overcome or work through or get beyond, all the things that we as students want to do. But and to hear that you can have a client who has been carrying like over 20 years worth of pain, and that you can help them in a matter of 4 to 5, 6 different sessions to clear out and to unclutter and untangle themselves from that particular moment in their lives is breathtaking. It's I want to hear from you, like when it comes to, the process on how we're able to do that, right? Okay. How do you determine, like, if somebody who is new and they don't know anything about
Mhm.
EMDR, right?
Yeah.
How are we able to say we can take a person who's living with this amount of trauma and reduce it, like in 4 sessions or what have you?
Well, this is kind of how I start with patients. Like I just say, I introduce EMDR. I have a really good book by Deborah Korn and Michael Baldwin, Every Memory Deserves Respect. So I have them start reading that book, have them orient themselves to that book, which has these things called storyboards in the middle of the book that are just really good images and snippets of EMDR. And it has little headlines on these images. And I really like that because it's not just a book that patients read, they can see it. We can go back to it. We can talk about it. It just really prepares them. So it's a psychologist, which is Deborah Korn, and Michael Baldwin, which is a patient. And he was receiving EMDR therapy. And the person that was seeing him he said, can I partner with you to write this book? He said, no, I can't because I'm your therapist. But so he went and found one. He found Deborah Korn, and she introduced the resource development installation protocol about 20 years ago. And so she's really good at resourcing. And so they came together and did this book. And so I have them start there. And then I really just let them know when the patient comes into me, this is a process. Okay, here's the theory, here's the theoretical frameworks, here's the phases. Some people don't need to know that. Some people do. So I kind of gauge where they're at. And then really I just say, let's take a look at your brain. And so I say, we do interventions in EMDR. I kind of use this metaphor. I say, listen, the mountain is the memory. Okay, we're going to go up the mountain. We're going on a quest. We're taking all the tools. And so I say, we're on the beach. Okay, we're on the beach. We're going to go up the mountain. We're going to go to all the stations. We're going to go to the station that starts fires, the medic, the cook, the map, how to pack a backpack. And we're going to go to all the stations. They all don't have to fit, but you're going to know what tools are in your backpack when we take them up. I'm the guide. So we're going to go up the mountain. I'm the guide. I'm going to tell you where the good places to rest are, where the good places to eat are. Where do we go? Let's avoid this tree, or this is a really good cave we can go into and just stop and rest. We might need to put up a tent here. And so as we're going up the mountain, I say, that's my role. Your role is to guide the journey within those parameters. And I'm going to tell you where the risks are, where we need to stop and rest, but you're in charge. And that really just gives them a sense of empowerment, doesn't it? To be able to look, instead of the intervention coming from the therapist to the patient, try some coping skills, try to put a cold washcloth on your face, try to do these activities and these skills. It's let's work with your memory. When they figure out what's in their brain, they can install something that's already there or enhance it. It's just so relieving because their brain's actually doing the work. So I kind of work with that. And that's what the resourcing component is assessing, can they process? Can they use imagery? Do they know what their nervous system is? And you're making all those assessments as the clinician before we select a target and reprocess it. Because the whole idea with the EMDR is you don't want to overwhelm that nervous system. That's sort of where I start and how I introduce it. And I don't necessarily say this could be done in 4 sessions. We'll say, we'll take a look at your brain. We'll do these interventions, but we'll just kind of have to see where you're at in time, right?
And I love that. I love how you mentioned, because ever since I have dove in, is that a word? Further into EMDR, I've become a huge lover of the brain and body. And one thing that I love to share with the clients that I work with is I like to talk to them about how their brain and their body has been serving them all of their life, and how
Yes.
been carrying and doing things all in the effort to help them to survive. And so when you share with them, I help them to say, let me take a look and let's learn about your brain. What I notice is that so many people, Kathy, it's amazing how we are living and walking around in these amazing bodies. And the first time
Yes.
you mention their brain, they're like, what? Okay. But then when you start breaking down to them how this all works, how EMDR, just like how the body wants to heal and naturally moves us towards healing. The mind and the body wants to do the same thing, right? Wants to naturally move us towards healing. And what I mean by that is, in thinking about some of the clients that we work with and how they face some of those challenges and have tried, right? Have tried so hard to try to move beyond it, but we've got to get the brain in and we got to check and see, right? To take a look at that. One thing I tell my clients now is we got to get your brain in the win game. And just like how sometimes, how sometimes you can have maybe a fuse box or a light bulb or something that burns out because you've been using it too long, how we take a look at the brain and that kind of essence as well to be able to help your brain come back online or rewire itself.
Yeah.
Okay, on the journey.
That's why I named it Rewired 360, because it's like you can rewire your brain and come full circle. I was originally going to go with living full circle, and I thought, let's go with rewire. That's really what I'm trying to do. But really, when we're looking at EMDR, we're really looking at the window of tolerance, introducing tools and skills so you can feel safe and secure when you venture into the file room or the memory network in the brain. So in order for this to be successful, you're a witness, right, to your own process in your own brain. It's not the therapist giving you these tools and skills and you coming and saying, oh, these don't work. It's you're a witness to your own brain, all three channels, mind, body, and emotions. You're a witness to those. And so by doing this and listening and thinking to those channels, you gain separation and perspective on those and how they function, and that we don't need to be defined by those. They're just thoughts. I had a patient today. I said, listen, when that thought comes on that you're not enough, just say, it's not your turn. I don't have an appointment with you and Kathy till next week. Many of you know I have a 6-year-old and 3-year-old. So I do a lot of those redirecting, like, oh, no, it's not your turn. And they separate it, other than that creating this identity disturbance, right? Or I can't do this skill. Yes, you can. There's been so many wonderful things in resourcing. I love resourcing that people are like, wow, that worked so well. I'm like, look how responsive your brain is. Isn't that great? And then we're able to hold that and process that through as facilitators of information. We're the facilitator, right?
And I think that that's the amazing part, right? Is that first of all, it's just EMDR is just an amazing therapy. Not only is it amazing, I know that, as we talk about just, what it is, right, and what it is that we do, how we get our start in it. I love something that you share too in helping clients to recognize, and also for us as therapists, that really it's the client's brain and body that's doing the healing, right? And then it takes a little bit of that pressure off of us as clinicians of trying to figure it all out. How we have these incredible human beings that sit in front of us. They're telling us their story, right? And with EMDR, the thing that I realize is that, it comes with these cutting edge tools. I tell my clients they're cutting edge, because most of the times when we're getting ready to use imagery and some of the things you talked about, maybe some of the tapping and things of that nature, clients haven't had those experiences. So they kind of look at with the side eye.
Yes.
Right? And I say all that to say that I think that it's just amazing to be able to be a part of such an empowering therapy, that we're helping our clients to understand that, look, we hear, we see, and we understand you face a lot of things, right? We want to take a look at how some of those things have impacted your brain and body and are stopping you from living your best and amazing life now, and then give you the tools, right? And the reason that I also call them cutting edge, because these are not just spur of the moment tools, right? These are really resources. These are skills that our clients can take away, and that as we teach it to them and they learn to do it, they can take care of themselves and they'll know what to do when they're not in session with us.
That's the window of tolerance, right? I want to talk to you about a couple of things. When you talk about this cutting edge protocol, I know that you have some experience down where you're at in Texas. I'm in Idaho with some people about the cutting edge, the beliefs, the sort of myths and stigmas about EMDR. I went to presented at a conference and they were saying, if this works so well, why isn't it more well spread? So I wanted you to speak to that, but I also wanted you to speak to your African American community and some of the beliefs as you're trying to figure out your demographic with the populations you're working with. There are also maybe some other beliefs there. I know we've talked about it, but for our listeners, could you elaborate on that?
Well, you know, what I found, and I mean, and just on this journey as being a therapist and moving into where what I believe is now where COVID has blessed us to move ahead, with being able to do a lot of things through telehealth, right? And so one of the things as a rising therapist in our industry that I'm learning is that people just are not comfortable. You know, they have the challenges with trust, which is so understandable, right? When you've got human interactions or relationships where maybe they try to speak or use their voice, or maybe they try to do something and maybe they go well, and then they face judgment, shame, or whatever. The thing that I'm learning, right, is about number one, therapy for people of color is already it's a challenge to get here, you know, because again, you know, it's the whole opening up and trust factor. But then when you throw in something like EMDR, which I love telling my clients, I say, listen, I do this. Now, this is a strategy everybody may not want to take away, but I do it. And because one of my things, one of my passions is about helping my clients to embody. In other words, we want to get you here in the now and helping you to heal the relationship with your body. So at my core, I really believe in holistic approaches to therapy. Now, with that being said, there are so many people who are living, but they're not aware, right? They're not aware of the importance of the body. The body doesn't become important until it gets sick or it's breaking down, just like our minds, right? We don't
Yeah.
usually, sometimes people wait until their whole life is broken down. That's a little snippet that say we don't have to wait until things get so bad to reach out for help. But one of the things that I do let them know is that, listen, I'm so sorry that our public education system did not connect the dots for us and told us to use our brain and then not mess it up, but they didn't really help us to understand the role that our brain and our nervous system play in our ability to carry stories, what we believe, right? And so one of the things I've witnessed with some of the clients that I have that are African Americans that have said yes to the EMDR, and they're like, how is it and why is it we haven't heard? One of the things, we need more therapists, right, to invest. Okay, how do you get access? Because this is not like people gonna wake up and readily accessible information if you're not in the field of psychology or mental health. So what does that mean? In my view, we need more therapists talking, sharing, educating on what EMDR is. And that comes back to us being willing to get on the path, right? Because I tell my clients, I said the founder of EMDR, Dr. Francine Shapiro, it wasn't her intention to leave folks out or what have you. It's just that we need other people to recognize, right, the power of this therapy and also be willing to invest. Okay, it is big. It is a whole thing. It's almost like going back to college. However, it's one of
Is, yeah.
right? It is.
That's why I named it EMDR University, because I was like, what?
It is a whole experience. So I say all that because, you know, for the African American community, seeking help is already tough, right? And we can come up with so many different stories and examples of why it's hard for people of color to reach up and ask for help. But the thing that I have the honor of asking or sharing now with my community in my little four corner of the world is that as a BIPOC therapist, I found a therapy modality that not only validates who we are, but it validates our experience in a big way. And that
one thing I wanted to share with you about that you really hit on was this idea of cultural beliefs, the narrative we hear in common terms today. And one of the beautiful things about EMDR is that you can really diffuse that relationship by letting them know, listen, you're coming to me as you are, I accept you, I receive you, I'm here with you. And at the same time, you don't have to tell me the story. So that's one very important critical piece in EMDR is and other trauma interventions that we would come to, they would have the narrative, the thoughts, how did you feel about it, the CBT realm. And here, you don't have to tell me the story. Just tell me your symptoms. tell me where they are in your body. We're watching it on a train. You don't have to describe the train stop and the train and the inner nature of it. You don't have to do that. There's been so much relief in the nervous system because people were saying, oh, I don't have to relive it. No, don't tell me the story. We work on the worst part of it. You desensitize that and we move forward. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is such an awesome experience. So that can really create safety in people who are hesitant to engage. In Idaho, I have a lot of ranchers, cowboys, those kinds of things, and they're very hesitant as well. And so it takes a lot of introducing what mental health awareness is. We unfortunately have one of the highest suicide rates out here. And so we're really trying to create an awareness. So there's a program here called the J Foundation. And what they're doing is they're building suicide awareness. One of the founders, his friend died by suicide. And so what they've done is they have this suicide awareness protocol where you come to the facility, they call it a boot check, and you go through and you get a pair of boots at the end. They give you a pair of cowboy boots, and their whole idea is to have everyone in our area wear cowboy boots, and they're gifting the high school students to cowboy boots when they graduate. That's their initiative this year. So really, it's just a lot of education about and demystifying the mental health treatment.
Right. And I think that that is wonderful. And I think that that's amazing, right? And in us looking at what is EMDR and how it helps or who it helps. And the thing that I appreciate, and I know we'll probably have to come back with a part 2 for this conversation, right, is looking at the fact that the honor I have now is that I am able to share with clients in a way, and I connect it often, Kathy, to things that are important to them, like their vehicle, right? I say, you know, your vehicle is so important to you, and that if the check engine light stuff comes on, you're going to go and take it to the experts and have them check it. Okay, this is the same thing you're doing with your mind and your body. You're saying, listen, I see a check engine light on. Maybe that check engine light is I've been super irritated lately. Maybe it's been I cannot stop ruminating over something that was painful, and then it started making me have nightmares about something I went through when I was little. Whatever it is, I am presenting the EMDR healing pathway as just, in fact, as a journey, in a journey of helping things, helping you the same way we would take care of those cars, right? So they can keep moving forward at an optimal state, that we get to do that for ourselves in a very real way through this amazing practice, you know? And so it's in the benefits of it is something that I said that you shared, which was the fact that number one, they are in charge really of the journey and the process, which I think is amazing, right? Because the therapists were kind of taken where we are, in fact, the guide, right? We're going traveling alongside of them of the path and pointing things, but they're the ones who are actually getting the real life healing and experience and recognizing the connections between what they've been through, their brain and their body, and then they're able to move through in such a way, right, that isn't so overwhelming, I guess you can say, that isn't so painful, you know, or as they say, when you got to conquer the thing that you're trying to confront, but you're doing it in a backdoor kind of way instead of trying to just face
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Good. So I want to talk a little bit about our upcoming episodes. What we plan on doing with the podcast. Tamera and I called it Journey Through the Eyes because we really believe that people can change their brain, and this is a journey through the eyes of the therapist, through the eyes of the patient, through the eyes of the business owner. So we're going to talk about coming up. We're going to talk about grief, EMDR and grief. That's what I do. And then we're going to, Tamera has a whole coaching business. So she's going to give us some juicy details on that. We're going to have some business offerings as well. So I'm teaching therapists how to create their own business offerings. I have a free EMDR huddle that you can join. If you want to just have questions, I have a free business brainstorm. So if you have questions about how to do your business, there's a Rewired 360 group. We can do consultations, those kinds of things. So those are kind of what's coming up. Do you have anything else that comes to mind? We're talking about upcoming episodes, Tamera.
No, I'm just looking forward to all the things that you listed, and to be able to share more so that, our listeners can really connect and get the things that they need, especially from the business and the huddle and all the other things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to when we come back so we can share more about that.
Yeah, so we're on the track. We're starting this podcast. We want to thank you for joining us on the journey and launching this podcast. It's been a labor of love, and it's been so fun to have someone to do it with.
Yeah.
I manifested Tamera. I said, I want to do this, but I need some momentum behind me. And here comes Tamera.
Look, and here we are. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. And so I am so excited and so grateful, right, that we're able to have these amazing conversations to be able to help and support not only the aspiring clinicians of EMDR, but also clients who are trying to better learn and make the decision to get on the EMDR pathway with a therapist that they are greatly matched with, right? So I'm
Yes,
so glad
yes.
that we have this conversation today.
Okay, well, thank you, listeners, for everyone. You can find Tamera at Arise Counseling and Psychotherapy, right? I didn't know the whole name. Mine's Rewired 360, the EMDR University. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on our website. We'll put that in the notes. And we'd love to have you join us again. Please share with your friends, like and share. We love that. And we'll talk to you next time.
See you next time.
Bye, friends.